Hey there, friends. Welcome to PsychoBites. My name is Matthew Beal, and I'm so glad you found me. I'm a licensed counselor and psychotherapist with 15 years of experience helping people with problems like trauma, depression, anxiety, grief, relationship problems, and the challenges of navigating a complex and often difficult world. I also have a PhD in practical theology with a focus on the intersection of psychology and theology. Please call me Matt. In PsychoBites, we're going to take a journey into the world of mental and relational health in relatively bite-sized chunks. I'm honored that you're here, and don't forget to smash like and subscribe or whatever you need to do on your platform to stay connected. Now, let's dive into what we're talking about today. Today I want to talk about emotional validation. What is it? What is it not? What's it for? How do we do it? I recently had a pretty significant parenting fail. For her birthday, my daughter wanted to go skiing for the first time. So I got online, paid hundreds in lift tickets and equipment rentals, bundled her and her little brother, my son, into the car, and made the 2-hour trek to the nearest slopes. It was their first time, and my first time in decades, so we were quite excited. It took us almost an hour to navigate the lodge itself, get our rentals, and get all bundled up, and finally we were standing in the snow at the base of the mountain. Then, of course, we had to actually get our skis on. I had experience getting my own on, but none whatsoever in helping a 12 and 7-year-old get into skis for the first time. That was shockingly difficult, and by the time we were done, the tears and frustrations had already risen to the surface. So, fearing a nuclear meltdown, I pulled on my best dad motivator hat and said, hey guys, listen closely. This day could be awesome, or it could be an epic failure, and the difference is going to be our attitudes. So let's grab a hold of our attitudes bravely. Let's fix this before it gets out of hand. They both kind of came around and they were like, oh, yeah, cool. All right, we're going to do this. And I'm feeling very successful in that moment. Yes, I did it. I motivated my kids. Yeah, this is awesome. Dad of the year. So with that settled, we practiced waddling around a bit and shuffled over to the bunny slope. Somehow they both made it onto the little escalator track and managed to stand up as it slowly eased them to the top, and they shuffled off without disaster. From the dizzying height of at least 40 feet over the lodge, I did my best to teach them about snow plowing, turning a little bit, and we were off. My daughter managed the slope fairly well and made her way down while I helped my son, who understandably fell quite a few times, and after all, his only teacher was a middle-aged psychotherapist and theologian who hadn't skied in 30 years. My son was feeling quite frustrated by the time we got to the bottom, and that's when I realized I had forgotten to tell my daughter to wait for us at the bottom. So we get down there, and she's literally nowhere to be found. We stood there with me at a loss, looking all around. We waited for a while, scanning the busy crowds, me and my son together. I'm feeling increasingly anxious at this point, and he is feeling increasingly uncomfortable and defeated. I tried calling her cell phone, but we didn't have service there. I texted, too, with no response. We searched the lodge in case she had gone back to our locker, and I finally got in touch with Ski Patrol. I'm like, hey, I can't find my daughter anywhere. I don't know where she is. I was just about to go all Liam Neeson on the place when, to my profound relief, she responds to my text. It turned out she had ridden back up the bunny slope and had been waiting for us at the top this whole time. At least 20 minutes, give or take. So, relieved, we head back up to the slopes and meet her. And at this point, she is furious with me, and my son is in meltdown mode, and we make our way back down the hill. But my son swears through tears that he is absolutely done with skiing. This triggers my daughter as she realizes the utter hopelessness of the situation. My wife didn't join us, so I can't leave my 7-year-old to help my daughter ski, and he is well beyond my meager powers of motivation. My daughter is smart enough to intuit all this, and she recognizes that the day is done. The birthday ski trip is a total bust. Trying to give her some sense of agency in the midst of all this futility, I at least asked her, "What do you think we should do?" And to her credit, she acknowledges that there was nothing for it but to pack up and head home. At the same time, though, she is furious, just raging mad. Her birthday present is ruined, and there was nothing I could do or say to fix that. She's mad at me, of course, first and foremost, because I'm the adult, and ultimately I am responsible for this birthday present, and I had failed her. I'm the one who should be navigating this, and navigating it well. I was there to give her a great time, but instead, I've only accomplished suffering. My dominant inner reaction at that point was defensiveness. I felt my defense mechanisms rising up. I wanted to stop her from being mad at me because I wanted to be a successful parent and not a failure. I wanted to be the hero of the moment, and that just wasn't an option. I wanted to say, whoa, I know this really sucks, but I did my best, so don't take this out on me. Thankfully, I didn't lean into my defenses, which I really wanted to do and felt very inclined to do, and might have done just a little bit, maybe without noticing. Instead, I offered her emotional validation. I said, "Sweetie, this is terrible. I am so sorry this happened. On your birthday, no less. I'm so sorry. It makes sense that you're angry. I wish there was anything I could do." And she was still angry. And she was angry for a lot of the ride home. I could not fix that. I could not save her from that or effectively defend myself from that. All I could do was offer emotional validation. I could affirm the validity of her emotional experience. Emotional validation is best recognized by comparing it to its opposite, emotional invalidation. When we invalidate somebody's emotions, we discount them. We treat them as wrong, bad, invalid, inappropriate. We treat the emotion itself as the problem. And when we do that, the person experiencing those emotions is likely to feel even worse. Not only do they feel mad or sad or angry, whatever it is, but they also face the additional message that their emotional experience is itself wrong or bad. They're shamed for their emotions. The implication is that they should feel bad for having their bad feelings in the way that they are. What can someone do then who feels badly about feeling badly? That is, someone who is experiencing emotional invalidation. Perhaps the two most common responses are to either have an emotional explosion or meltdown, or to stifle those emotions, to suppress them, to grind them down and bottle them up. But emotions don't deal well with being stifled. We can do that for a time, but emotion tends to spring up again, often in unpredictable ways. You can sweep it all under the carpet, but hey, it's still under the carpet. And when we sweep emotions under the carpet for long enough, they tend to fester there and to burst out in unusual, surprising, problematic ways. For these reasons, emotional invalidation is incredibly disempowering. The invalidation I was tempted toward on our ski trip was rooted in self-defense. I wanted to say, "Hey, don't be so mad. We'll try again another time." Or, "Whoa, don't be mad at me. I tried really hard to make today great for you. Can't you just be thankful that we got to have a little bit of fun? A little bit?" Translated, these sentiments basically mean you are wrong to feel angry and wrong for not feeling gratitude. Other common forms of invalidation are similar, and people often offer them with good intent, but with sadness we might hear, "Oh, don't feel bad," or "Let's just look at the bright side." Or with grief we might hear, "Hey, at least they're in a better place," or maybe with confusion, "What? This is so simple. Or with frustration, oh, hold on, just calm down. Now, the good intention is that we want to help people feel better, but the message still comes across as what you feel is wrong or bad, and you should feel differently. That approach, honestly, can be helpful at times. I don't want to totally discount that attempt to offer comfort or those type of examples, even though those sort of responses usually get stereotyped as completely unhelpful. For good reason, they are largely unhelpful. But there are times when they might be helpful, but generally speaking, it risks emotional invalidation. At other times, the invalidation is maybe less benevolent, veering even toward defensiveness, blame, or even gaslighting. You have no right to be angry about this, or I told you not to go there, wear that, date him, etc. Or even the more concerning, it's your own fault for pushing me. Emotional validation, in contrast, affirms the validity of someone's emotional experience. It's an acknowledgement that one's emotions are okay. They're welcome, they're understandable, that they make sense. Something like, hey, I can understand how you'd feel that way. It grants those emotions validity, as opposed to denying that validity. So how do we do that? How do we offer emotional validation well? So first of all, we listen. Active listening is a vital skill that takes work and practice. I plan to dive into that more directly in another episode, but for now, I characterize it as something like empathic curiosity. It's taking an active, non-defensive interest in someone's experience and checking with them to be sure that you're understanding their experience well. Hey, tell me more about that. What was that like for you? Okay, I hear you saying XYZ. Am I on track? Is that right? Am I missing anything? So from the foundation of hearing and understanding their experience well, emotional validation then says, oh yeah, I get that. Wow, that sounds really difficult or frustrating or hurtful or lonely or sad. Emotional validation might say, if I experienced that or saw things that way, I'd probably feel that way too. Or maybe, hey, I get why that's such a big deal for you. It's important to remember that, like any aspect of love and care, offering emotional validation is more about the person's reception of the validation or the love or care, not so much about the giving of it. The important question is, did you give that validation or that love or that care in a way that they were able to receive? A lot of people fail to recognize that with regard to love. It's not that I did the loving thing, it's that they experienced that gesture as loving and experienced my love. For many, this connects to the idea of things like love languages. If you're speaking a love language that somebody else doesn't understand, it's not going to be helpful. If they don't receive your gesture as love, it will not make a difference. And the same is true with validation. Effective validation focuses on someone's experience of feeling validated. That's when we know we've done it well, when they experience it as validating. So a lot of people might wonder, and this is a legitimate, important question, what about irrational emotions? Yes, excellent. Okay, great question. Here's a great opportunity for some psychoeducation. I firmly believe that there's no such thing as an irrational emotion. Though I say that with a slight qualification. Sometimes emotions are rooted in an actual organic problem, like major depressive issues, maybe even some form of psychosis. That is, sometimes our emotional experience comes from brain chemistry and neurological dysfunction that requires medication or some other direct intervention. However, in the vast majority of situations, emotions are a rational response to one's felt world of meaning. What are feelings for? Feelings are to be felt. They're not good or bad in a moral or ethical sense, but they are good in the same way that sight, touch, or smell are good. As I reach out and touch the desk in front of me, I can feel its texture, its temperature, its solidity. That's my inner experience of touch in this case. As I look, I see my computer screen with its colors and information. I imagine you watching from wherever you are. Sight is our inner experience of the visible world. And in the same way, emotion is our inner experience of the world of meaning. Kind of like a sixth sense. It's the way we feel and experience meaning within ourselves. As such, it's always relevant, always important, always valid. Since it primarily relates to meaning, our emotions always relate to our interpretation of the world around us and our relationships to this world. Our emotions derive from what it means to us that somebody said they love us, or that we didn't get an invitation to the party, or that a partner keeps forgetting to flush the toilet, or that we did not get the interview for a dream job, or what it means that I failed my daughter in her ski trip, or what it means for her that her father failed her in her ski trip. What does it mean to her? And that's always an interpretive work that relates to our ideas, our thoughts, our beliefs about the world around us. If we have the idea that this isn't fair, this is unjust, then we're likely to feel angry, and rightly so. Anger is a rational, appropriate, and sensible response to injustice. I might feel sad if somebody communicates to me that they don't love me, or that they don't care about me. Or if I have the experience of loss in a relationship, or a loss of a hope that was important to me. Sadness is a rational response. It's a rational response to loss, or rejection, or disappointment. The emotion in these examples is a rational, understandable, valid response to the meaning we find in such experiences. The emotion is the sensation of our world of meaning. Importantly, since emotion always involves interpretation, our experience of meaning can sometimes be unrealistic. The emotion is a good response to the meaning, but the meaning can be off at times. In cognitive psychology, that's called a thinking problem or a cognitive distortion. Sometimes our thoughts don't reflect reality as well as they could, and that can cause problems. We might be, say, catastrophizing, for instance, which is predicting the future in unrealistically negative ways. All or nothing thinking casts reality in a binary set of choices. A relationship is either good or bad. An opportunity is either right or wrong. A friend is either trustworthy or untrustworthy. Meanwhile, lived human experience tends to straddle a lot of gray spaces. Trust, for instance, is not usually an all or nothing matter, but involves degrees of trust and mistrust. I trust my daughter to do her homework, but not to carry a refrigerator up a mountain, let's say. Other thinking problems include things like emotional reasoning, overgeneralization, mind reading, mental filtering, or personalization. There's a bunch of them, you can look them up. Noticing a potential thinking problem can lead to challenging or testing that thought. Is this thought realistic? Is this idea helpful? Those are two terms I come back to a lot, realistic and helpful. We can try adjusting the idea to be more realistic and more helpful, and then practice thinking the better idea. This generally leads to more positive emotional experience. Now, this is a brief glimpse at cognitive psychology, which I bring up primarily to show that feelings are always okay. Sometimes they're connected to problematic ideas that we can fix and heal, but the feeling itself is not the problem. Another approach to understanding emotions is a more psychodynamic approach. I like this approach to psychology. It emphasizes the relational and unconscious foundations for emotional experience. It asks, what's going on beneath the surface that might need attention? what are some early experiences that might be, in a sense, haunting our current experience? How deeply can we peel the onion, so to speak, in analyzing how and why we feel what we feel? What purpose might an emotional response be serving? For instance, people sometimes self-sabotage out of fear of failure or even fear of success. Or we might respond to one person in a way more directly relevant to a different relationship entirely, like kicking the cat or snapping at the kids when we're mad at our boss. Or we might experience shocks of fear related to a past trauma. Each of these tend to happen due to factors inaccessible to ordinary conscious thought. Now you might wonder how that relates to emotional validation. Now my experience as a therapist has shown that emotional validation can help people relax into their emotional experience without shame or defensiveness. They can be unashamed because they sense that they're accepted by others, emotions and all. And they can be non-defensive because they aren't being judged for their emotions. Their emotions are okay. Their emotions are not the problem. And that might help them ease into self-acceptance. Breathe a bit and relax into the totality of their experience, body, mind, soul. Secondly, and closely related, emotional validation fosters relational connection. It can be a form of empathic intimacy. Strangely, empathy has faced surprising and very unhelpful critique lately from popular figures, but empathy is simply the capacity to understand, imagine, and connect experientially with what other people are going through. As we communicate that empathic sense, we foster connection and clear the way to address the actual problems, the problems sensed in the emotional realm. When a friend is angry, their anger isn't the problem. Their anger could lead to behavioral problems. People do lash out, and that can be hurtful. But the emotion itself isn't the problem. As I just mentioned, the emotion could be connected to a thinking problem and resolved in thinking more realistic and helpful thoughts. Just as likely, however, is that the anger is sensing a relational or behavioral wrong done. For instance, anger could point to an injustice. Anger is an appropriate, sensible response to circumstances or actions one interprets as unjust. Anger is, in fact, an important response to injustice. It can foster the motivation to correct the injustice, just as the pain of, say, touching a hot stove helps us yank our hand away from further damage. Emotional validation can help people relax into their emotions. It can foster empathic connection. And rather than problematizing an emotion, validation can point to problems that are important to address. For all these reasons, emotional validation strikes me as really, really important, especially in this day and age, when conflict abounds. And now here's an important point. Practice. Emotional validation takes practice, just like any other skill. Most people are not innately gifted at emotional validation. I discover in my work that almost everyone needs to practice emotional validation, and they need to practice it a lot. A lot of us weren't taught about it, and it wasn't often modeled for us. And so we learn about it, and then we put it into practice. We get it wrong some, we stumble, we get back up, we keep trying, and we get better at it. And gradually, we internalize it as an increasingly natural inclination and habit, to the point that it becomes part of us, part of our character. One of the best ways to start practicing is with your immediate family, friends, coworkers, the people you see and interact with most commonly. But don't forget that the most immediate, intimate relationship you have is to yourself. And based on my therapeutic experience, I suspect that Many people listening would benefit greatly from practicing healthy doses of self-validation. Many of us are actually already skilled at self-invalidation. We've practiced that a lot, probably. Particularly if we've experienced invalidation from others, significant people in our lives, especially in our childhood, we're going to internalize that. And we're going to invalidate ourselves as a common habit. Often this takes place through an inner monologue, sometimes called the inner critic, an authoritative self-reflection saying, "Oh, you didn't do that very well," or "That was stupid, why'd you say that?" Or "Don't feel that way, you idiot. Just try to be happy." Now, if these sort of approaches were helpful, it would have worked 1,000 times ago. So practicing self-validation can be an important aspect of developing the skill of emotional validation. One handy strategy for dealing with our own emotions applies equally in our relationships to others. Here, have help. When it comes to emotions, what we can do with them is, first of all, to hear them, to have them, secondly, and third, to help them. First, we hear our emotions. That's the active listening component in a relationship. And then we grant ourselves permission to have our emotions. Go ahead and simply feel your feelings. There's the validation component. Hey, it's okay that you feel that way. It makes sense. It's important for you to experience inwardly that world of meaning in an authentic, honest, open way. And finally, we offer help. What can we do? What's the next step here? Emotional validation, whether it's towards self or other, isn't necessarily the end of the story, of course. It's just an important step along the way. I can't usually rescue myself or others. I'm not the hero or the Superman, and you're not either. Not even for ourselves most of the time. I can't just snap my fingers and stop myself from feeling angry or confused or upset or fearful, whatever it might be, but I can offer help. Hey, I can't take away your sadness, but I can be with you in your sadness. And I think in many ways that's the primary essential foundation. For any helping work, it's a committed presence. I can't solve this, I can't fix this, but I'm willing to be with you through this. Hey, and maybe together we'll come up with something. And that's true for self-validation as well. I'm not going to give up on myself. In this moment, I'm going to let myself feel my frustration, anger, stress, etc. And then I'm going to maybe practice some intentional breathing to slow my heart rate, relax my blood pressure, and metabolize the cortisol in my system, the primary stress hormone. Then I'll be in a position to more effectively practice other coping skills, like maybe healthy communication, journaling, taking a walk, progressive relaxation, talking to a friend or a therapist, maybe outlining a plan, setting realistic and attainable goals, and taking some time out to enjoy music or art, having a glass of water, things like that. Maybe just go ahead and let yourself have a good cry once in a while, or shout at the stars. Oh, and as for my daughter, I assured her that I would let her skip any day of school she wanted, and we would come back to the slopes together. Without her little brother this time. And we would have a great day of skiing. Just the two of us. That wasn't a cure for a ruined birthday present, but it did help. And now we're both looking forward to that a lot. So, I hope this introduction to emotional validation has been informative and helpful for you. Thanks for being here. You matter immensely. And I hope you'll join me again next time. So, until then, blessings and love to you. Thanks.